Hey guys, I am going to introduce you to someone, someone who I just met, but very impressed with her, very impressed with her work and how she approaches and speaks to me makes me comfortable. So I'm sure she's making all the other the people that she's working with to save them, to help them feel as good as well. Amy Boyd. Amy, you are the program manager at YouthWorks. Um, please tell us a little bit about about yourself first, and then tell us a little bit about what your agency does.
I'm the mother to two beautiful adult women, and I have a degree in social work. I have a master's degree in social work. I've been a practicing social worker since 2009. So, whatever that math is, I'm good at social work. I'm really bad at math. Um, and I have worked specifically with human trafficking survivors since 2015. But honestly, I've worked with them my whole career because I've worked with runaway and homeless youth my whole career. And runaway homeless youth are particularly vulnerable to trafficking. And so before we knew to identify trafficking, we were working with them. We just didn't know that's what it was called.
Are these runaways just runaways for any reason, or are they runaways because they're being sexually abused at home and they want to get away from it?
We need to have love and belonging. And typically we find that with our families. So it's not typical for a teenager to run away unless they are somehow not getting that need met, right? So it could be that there's abuse. It could be that there are issues within the family that don't allow the parents and the child to communicate with each other in a way that they feel that connection, right? So as somebody who does family work, I often see myself as an interpreter, like a translator between the youth and the parents. They love each other, no doubt about that, but they have a hard time speaking to each other in a way that people feel connected and loved. So it could be something terrible is happening to them. It could be that they don't feel a sense of love and belonging where they are. And it is a powerful need. Sometimes it's not what they're running away from, it's what are they running to, right? They may be running to somebody who makes them feel special. All of the clients I've ever served, that's the case. They're running to somebody that makes them feel special.
Have you seen an influx of abuse or runaways?
I don't know that there's an increase in it. I think there's an increase in awareness. There is an increase in sexual abuse of youth by other youth. And I believe that that is connected to the proliferation of pornography. When I was a teenager, there was no such thing as a cell phone where I could look up porn, right? Our kids can do that. And I'm not trying to have much of an opinion about pornography, but there are consequences to young people being exposed to explicit sexual acts before their brain is ready to understand the consequences of that. Um, so I would say that is an increase, but in terms of trafficking or runaway youth, we're just more aware of it, is what I think.
I'm a fashion photographer in New York. When I do my casting, when I do my castings, there are anytime, anywhere in between, say, 10 to 75 girls coming to my studio to present themselves to us, right? To the clients, to the photographer, to my clients. And when they come, they would come with a book which has 25 photographs or 30 photographs, or they would come with an iPad and they have it all digitally on the iPad. So I'm sitting here and I'm not going to name names, but it was a very, very big companies that I'm sure you know as well. And I'm doing the casting for this company because we're looking for this young girl to do the work. And girls are coming and so on. And then all of a sudden, this girl comes and she hands over. I said, "Can I take a look at your portfolio?" And she hands over her iPad. And of course, I click on the button, and the first thing that was there was porn. And I'm saying, well, I look at her. She doesn't know that I'm I can see it because she's standing like 4 feet away from me. And I look at it and I turn around and I show it to her. So now she knows,
Yeah.
that what she was doing. And this was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And she looks at me and she's embarrassed. She turns red all of a sudden. And she's like, I borrowed this from my mother. This is my mother's iPad.
Straight threw her mom under the bus.
She threw her mom under the bus. But like you said, I think it's an epidemic of porn.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, when you have a young girl and she wasn't more than 19, 20 at the most, is watching porn at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm sure they have nothing else to do. Is that what it is? And then they will try to take that and try to be that in
Yeah.
their lives. And I think I'm going to let you speak on that, not me. Go ahead.
I do think it contributes to just a false sense of what it means to be a woman, right? And an inauthentic way of being with people sexually, right? So it's one of the ways that our young girls, our young people learn about sex, right? So the girls that we work with who have been trafficked into prostitution, sometimes the way they've been educated on how to act with buyers is by watching pornography. Um, yeah. So, and I also will say every adult woman that I have served who's been trafficked into prostitution or domestic sex trafficking has also been trafficked into pornography. And there is a statistically significant level of dissociation, which is something is happening to you that is beyond your body's ability to cope or integrate the experiences with your emotion. That's dissociation. There's a statistically significant level of dissociation for women who are trafficked into pornography. So pornography is not harmless. I don't know that there's a way to know that what a person is watching is a woman consenting to it, or are you looking at my client who was being trafficked and has PTSD and is being given heroin or fentanyl to keep her under control? There's just no way to know that I'm aware of.
Sex trafficking is sex trafficking, and you are basically going to sell a girl or a boy. But even porn could be sex trafficking, and porn is the act of capturing that and selling that as well. So it's like you sell the girl and then you go and you sell the porn as well. The porn brings you money again and again and again, and the girl does the same by meeting different clients of yours. And to keep the girl in control, you have her hooked on some kind of drug.
And a trauma bond.
Trauma bond is what?
A bond that is created using a combination of inflicting trauma on somebody and giving them some reassurance or kindness. So there has to be four things present for there to create a trauma bond. One is the belief that you could be killed, that you are in danger of being killed, and that your abuser will carry that threat out. The second one would be, in addition to that fear, you are given a small kindness, right? So they buy you something, they tell you something nice. The third condition is that you are isolated from other perspectives. So you are in a very small community, basically, and you're not interacting with squares, with regular people, right? And then the fourth element of a trauma bond really is the belief that you have no way to escape the situation. You're unable to leave. It is the most powerful thing I've ever seen. It changes people's brain.
It's incredible. I am learning so much with these interviews. I'm hating every single thing I'm learning, by the way, just so you know. It's not a pleasure to learn all of this. Learning that there are 6 year olds and 9 years old trafficked to truck stops is not something I want to I want to know, or I know it now, so I cannot undo it. After the interview, I'm driving on the highway, and I purposely pull up into a truck stop on purpose, just to see that, hey, is there a car coming here with 6, 7 young girls and ages of 8, 9, 10, because that's what they do. Because that's what I was told by one of the agencies, but one of the organizations, that it's a normal thing. They do this with young girls. So coming back to you, Amy, how what does your agency? So your agency deals with runaways. Your agency also deals with runaways who are being trafficked. What is your job in it? Like, what do you do? I'm sure it's an organization, so there are many other facets to it, but what is yours?
Yeah, so my job now is so for years I was the kind of only person serving trafficking because it was new in 2015. It was relatively new in North Dakota. We had some legislation passed, and part of that created a position called navigator. And so I was one of the first navigators working in Western North Dakota. And so I worked directly with trafficking survivors, would basically was on call 24/7 and worked really closely with law enforcement. But we've been able to get federal grants and some state money from our attorney general, who is a big supporter of anti-trafficking efforts. So I now am supervising the people who are doing the work that I used to do, which is really good because when I was doing the work, I had great people to supervise me, but we were so new at it that we didn't know all of the nuances. I tend to say that everything I learned about working with human trafficking victims, I learned at their expense. It's not, when I went to social work school, it's not something that was taught. And some of the interventions are different than a typical social work intervention, which I can talk more about later. But basically, I felt really strongly that the people that are doing the work needed to have input from somebody who had done it for a long time and could give some feedback. So I supervise a bunch of people. I write reports on grants. I do things like this. And I try to just support my people the best I can so that they can do really good work with the most vulnerable people among us.
What do we do as a society to educate our young ones? And how much of that is your focus or your agency's focus?
Not a lot of our focus can be on that because we barely have the bandwidth to serve the people who have survived it. I wish we had more resources and people to do prevention work, and we're getting into doing more of that, but that is not that's more difficult when you're trying to serve the people who are already devastated, right? So I will say that I'm hopeful that we will be able to do that, though. And in terms of educating, so my dream would be that all little boys are taught that girls are more than things to have sex with. Honestly,
Don't you teach that at home?
I would hope that that's the case, but judging by the fact that I have clients who are having people have sex with them against their will, it's not being taught, right? So I also think about the responsibility of teaching consent to both boys and girls. What does consent mean? And like, I can't speak for the rest of the country, but there are parts of the country where people are incredibly conservative about sex and there's not a lot of open dialogue, right? Like with kids.
Family, you mean?
Yeah, but also like in the public school setting, but yes, within the family unit. We were foster parents, and my foster daughter would say to me every once in a while, "Oh, Aunt Amy, are we having the awkward condom talk again?" I'm like, we are having the awkward condom talk again. Um, so it really has to do with teaching respect for each other on a really fundamental level. I wish our organized sports, so like I have a really good friend who's a football coach, want him to teach all of his students, all of his athletes about consent and about what prostitution really is. There's way too many jokes about, like referring to women as sluts and like whatever. Um, I think that would be a good place to start. And I think it would be a good place to start by teaching little girls to say no with the same enthusiasm as we teach them to behave.
I feel that we must do the education bit, and every organization I have spoken with agrees, but does not have the means to. And I think that the federal government should step in and do something about it, teach our kids in school.
I wish that in elementary school there was a way to teach. So like what pedophiles, what abusers rely on is being able to scare their victim into not telling anybody, right? Like, I'm going to hurt your mom. I'm going to hurt whoever it is you love. I'm going to hurt them if you tell anybody. That's just standard pedophile behavior, right? So we teach about good touch, bad touch, but do we teach about, by the way, if somebody tells you that they're going to hurt somebody you love, that's really normal for somebody to do when they're trying to make you do something. And they're not going to get away with it the way that they're telling you they can.
Say I am the abused and I am now in your care. What do you do with me?
I think one of the hardest parts for people who start doing the work with trafficking survivors is the feeling of you're never doing enough, right? Because how could you ever do enough? How could you, like, you would have to go all the way back to when they were a kid and somebody was hurting them, right? So what we provide, what we offer is we're just going to be with you. Like, you don't have to be alone. And whatever it is that you want to focus on, we're going to do that with you. And we're not going to expect that you are perfect at it or that you're going to get it immediately. But we're going to walk alongside you while you do what it is that you want to do. Survivors have like so little choice given to them that it's really important that they are given choice in everything that they do with us. And to be honest, so after how many years of doing this, I am convinced the the most sacred thing we can do is bear witness to somebody's pain. And you just are present with them. And sure, there's some practical things you can do. We can get them food. We can help them get a driver's license. We can help all of those practical things aside. People who have endured torture, which my clients have, they just deserve to have somebody be like bear witness to them and be present with them, which is way more difficult than giving them food.
Let's go from education, not directly to Amy, but let's go from education to the gray matter in the middle. I don't have any education. I'm being abused. I don't know I'm being abused. All of a sudden, I discover that I'm being abused. What do I do? How do I even know that your organization exists?
Typically, how people become aware of us is either a friend of theirs has had services from us. We also have worked really, really hard to have excellent relationships with law enforcement and prosecutors. So by the very nature of the life they're forced into, there's criminal aspects, right? So our girls, our clients come into contact with the criminal justice system quite often. And oftentimes what will happen is law enforcement will bring them to us, right? They will call. I can't tell you how many times I will get a call from law enforcement in the middle of the night. We've got somebody here. Can you come down and talk to them? So how they would become aware of us is word of mouth. We do have a pretty good like social media presence. We're on, of course, Facebook, but Instagram, and Twitter. And so that's part of it.
Every time there's a cop involved and the cop gives you a phone call, it's already late.
Yeah.
So, mm, mm, education would be one thing to prevent. What else can I find out about you without going to the cops or without having company where they have fallen in trouble before?
Mhm.
What happens if I am in a house that pretends to be so clean and nice? We don't have any problems, and I don't associate with other girls that have problems, and I'm being abused. And at the same time, I don't know how to reach out to organizations such as yours.
Mhm.
How can we bring that information to every household in
Yeah.
North Dakota or in the country? Like,
Yeah. So
hey, your parents are not being fair to you or not being nice to you and they're abusing you or they're selling you. You have someone else taking care of you, and that's your government, and you can call XYZ.
yeah.
You know,
So you're talking about like tertiary prevention, right? So
right.
billboards, right? And there are billboards. The Homeland Security Blue campaign has billboards that will say like 1-800 be free, I think is what it's called. You can have signs. We have some signs in like rest areas and truck stops. It took us a long time to get the right kind of sign because our our clients do not know that they're being trafficked. Like they believe that they are in a relationship with somebody, but one of the most difficult times when we're working with a trafficking victim is when she finds out that what's happening to her is called human trafficking. It's devastating, right? Imagine that you find out that the person that you love who's in a relationship with you, they don't really love you. They're just trying to get you to do something to make money for them. It's devastating, right? So we had to get an ad that would speak to people in their own language, right? And I think what we ended up, and we have survivors that are on staff, so we consult with them, and everything we do is kind of seen through a survivor lens. Like, what would, when you were being trafficked, what would this have been like for you? And we ended up, honestly, some of them were like, are you having sex for money? Is somebody making you have sex for money? Right? And you don't want to do that anymore, you can call us. Like basically, I'm oversimplifying it, but it really needed to be something that wasn't geared for professional eyes, but for somebody who's in the life. So some of it is that.
Our infrastructure for this industry, would you pass the education side of things and would you pass the lack of awareness side? Would those two things, would you get them to work better?
Children do not have many rights in the United States. The United States is one of the only countries that has not signed the International Child Rights Bill. That the right, so it's tricky because you depend on parents to get information to their children, right? What if the parents are the ones who are, and our systems are put in place to make sure that kids are protected, right? Our child protection system, um, criminal justice system is in place. Could it be improved? Sure. Our system, I'm sure my work could be improved.
I would like to get more information over to my audience so they can get aware and they should be aware of what happens. So tell us, the girl has been abused. You have got a phone call from the police department to come pick her up. Can you walk us through the things that you would do mentally, physically, so on.
Yes. Yep. Because this is a pretty common scenario. So what happens is law enforcement would bring her into our shelter. So we have a runaway and homeless youth shelter. So law enforcement has brought in, let's say, a 16-year-old girl. Her name is, let's call her Ginny. Okay. So Ginny comes in. We have gotten information from law enforcement that they suspect that she's been trafficked, but she is not talking to anybody, and she certainly is not talking to law enforcement, right? Um, so the first thing that we do is we assess for safety with her, like include mental health safety as well, right? Like suicidal ideation, depression, all of those things. We feed her, we clothe her, we give her space to feel safe and to settle in. We spend time with her. So one of our trafficking specialists will go meet with her and get a sense of what it is that she wants, like what's important to her. Oftentimes, even youth who are being trafficked in the worst of their trafficking circumstances, that's not the thing that feels like they want to work on the most. Sometimes it's a past sexual abuse event that happened to them and they didn't get justice for that, right? That they'll be fixated on or they'll be focused on. Sometimes it's that they want to go live with a family member, but they can't go live with that family member for whatever reason. So whatever their goal is, we would be working on that with them. Now it's tricky because as a juvenile, like they have self-determination. They have the right to some things. We believe strongly in youth voice and youth choice, but we also have a responsibility to them as adults, right? Our job is to help protect them. So there's a balance between here's what we think is best, right? Here's what we're going to recommend for you. And then helping them advocate for themselves. So it could be a lot of different things that they would want help with, but we would also be working within the system to help them have safety. So we work closely with the child protection system, the child welfare system, to do whatever we can to get them to a place that is safe and supportive.
Education we started with, now the thing has already happened. The girl is abused. She goes through all that, comes to you. She starts her building up process. Now she is of age to go and work, stand up on her own feet. Say she's not, her parents are the ones that were abusing her, so she can't go home.
So we have, it's called the Continuum of Housing Program for Youth. And so we've got, so for 18, 17 and up, the role of our worker in that is to help them find housing, help them obtain job skills, but more importantly, help them maintain a job because like they have so much trauma, right? So the first time that their boss does something that triggers a trauma response, oftentimes their response is like, F you, I'm out, like I don't need this, whatever. So a lot of it is getting them support through that. So trauma therapy, but also like budgeting. How do you provide for yourself? What are your goals in terms of becoming self-sufficient? But they may come from circumstances where nobody in their family really was self-sufficient. Like they don't have a model to base that on. A lot of our girls are like generational, like they break the chain generationally of people who go on to get higher education, who have stable employment. And that is scary. That's a being a trailblazer is always scary. So it's a combination of really supportive case management as well as education on here's how you do that. And we're going to keep helping you with that. I do want to say one of the things that I want, the people who are listening to know, I guess, is people have a lot of opinions about youth who are gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and the country is pretty divided about that, right? And I'm not a very political person. A lot of my energy and bandwidth goes to serving the human beings in front of me, right? Um, it's astounding to me the number of people who want to support human trafficking victims, but espouse hatred and bigotry about LGBTQ issues under the guise of God, right? And I, again, like I have no, but they're the same. So people who want to help human trafficking victims, it's the same people. They're the same people that folks have really strong opinions about being, wrong. Um, Transgender LGBTQ youth are at higher risk of being trafficked because of that, because of societal shame and alienation.
Don't we teach this to our young that it's okay to belong to a group, or we how do we make that normal?
There's folks who just have really strong opinions and they have the loudest voices. Um, so I don't know how to push back on that. I don't know how to push back, how to challenge that. I want to help human trafficking victims, but don't help the gay kids.
Yeah, so don't I mean, if you're gonna do it, just do it, and don't pick and choose who you're gonna do it. Don't play God, so to speak.
Yeah, like, okay, so at the very beginning of social work, like in the 1800s, there was a concept of the worthy poor, right? Like you help people who behave a certain way. Like if you behave well and you're poor, you get help. But if you act poorly, if you make bad choices, if you whatever, then you're not worthy of it. Like that's such bullshit. People deserve help because they're human beings. And regardless of where they are with their behavior, should not enter into it, especially children.
Do your local businesses support giving jobs to the victims?
The experiences that we have had with employers has been good, and landlords. Like, so our housing program, the response that we have gotten from one of the major landlords in the area or management companies, they are fantastic. The owner of it sits on our anti-trafficking multidisciplinary team. Like they believe very strongly in helping. So in that way, we're really lucky.
I'm living in this amazing community. How do I go and spot a pedophile or a sex trafficker? How will I know, and who do I call?
So part of our training is that you cannot spot a trafficker. It could literally be anybody. Um, it is easier to spot somebody who's being trafficked than a trafficker. Um, and so I could answer that really quickly. It would be somebody who is homeless, who is runaway, who maybe has charges of prostitution, because prostitution is typically human trafficking. And what to do about it, the best thing you can do is get as much specific information as you can observe, including the license plate of the vehicle if a vehicle is involved, and you call law enforcement and ask to speak to somebody in their human trafficking unit. If they don't have a human trafficking unit, they will probably direct you to a personal crimes person, and then give all of that information. Do not intervene on your own. You can make things worse for the victim. Observe and then report it to the proper authorities.
Will the proper authorities believe what I'm saying? So
I
I,
believe
I look at my neighbor and I don't like him. So I'm going to just call my police department and say, you know what? I think I have a pedophile.
they have to have enough for a search warrant. They have to have enough like probable cause, right? But there are task forces for sure in New York. I've worked with folks in New York, dedicated to, human trafficking for sure, but also crimes against children, or ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children. I think you would get to the right person and they would take your information, and you may never know what they do with it, but I believe that the system will do something with it.
I want to call someone who is specifically taking care of children who are abused. What is that 1-800 number, or what is that way? How do I get in touch with them?
If you believe that they are a juvenile, you need to report it to child protection wherever you are, social services. That's the state entity that is federally funded to protect children. You can report it to law enforcement as well, but that's what I would do. That's what we do. If it is an adult, I would reach out to the task force, whatever task force exists in your area. If there isn't a task force, then I would recommend that you talk to a local prosecutor, to a local judge, to whatever law enforcement is interested in informing one. But every community should have a multidisciplinary human trafficking task force or coalition.
In the website business, the SEO and the marketing and so on, they say when you have to click more than 2 times to get to a certain page on a certain website, they don't do it. Humans today do not have the mental capacity or the patience to click 3 times. Each click comes within 1 to 2 seconds. So within 6 seconds, the brain is off to something else. And you are asking me to go research and find that telephone number or the website and then make a phone call. It's never happening, Amy.
Then I would say do better. Like, so I'm in the excuse reduction business. And I would say, like, people don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to be drawn into something that's intriguing to them because of human trafficking and then say, oh, God, that's a lot to do. Yeah, it is a lot to do. And you know what? You have the luxury of doing it, so do it.
A State Department can regulate a law that will have a banner flash up on every news channel every so often. I mean, kids watch news, don't they? So why can't we put it there? Why can't we put it where children are hanging out on the internet? Why can't we put it on the television? We know that they hang out there because they're amazing games to play or YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, they should do it in, like
Can't we just
cooperative.
flash it there every 2 hours?
Yeah.
Make it automated so we don't have to manually go press a button because we don't have the capacity to do it. Why can't we do that? Program it, put it out there, and why can't it be regulated and pushed by the government?
To me, it kind of comes down to a philosophical, like, as a citizen, what is your responsibility to other citizens? As an adult, what is your responsibility to children, regardless of what your profession is? Like, it's a civics lesson. Are you civic minded?
Give us your website so this way maybe people can reach out to you through your website or your telephone number of your organization.
So it's www.youthworksnd.org. I will just give my email address because that's where it would come to, which is Boyd, BOYD, at youthworksnd.org.
Amy, thank you so much. Pleasure.
Welcome so much. You have a good day.